Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. In this video, we are going to discuss about passive voice. So, what is the passive voice? Now, generally, we know that a sentence begins with the performer of the action, which is called the subject, then the verb, and then the object or person that is performing the action. And this we have discussed previously as the active sentence or active voice sentence. Now, in case of passive voice, now how do we formulate a passive sentence? Very simply, if the sentence begins with the object or person that is performing the action, then this is a passive voice sentence. Now let me give you an example. The cake was made by Adil. Now this is a passive sentence. Cake is an object, then the verb made and the subject Adil. So this is a passive sentence. Now, when should we use the passive voice? You have to keep in mind that sometimes it is not important to mention the subject, or we don't know who the subject is. Let me give you an example. Somebody cleaned the room. So we would prefer to say the room was cleaned because it's not important or we don't know who the subject is. And also, when the object is the most important part of the sentence, we also use passive voice. And we can also use the passive voice when we want to change the focus of the sentence. Now we often read passive sentences in the news because sometimes the journalist does not know who did something. And very important is that it is also used in scientific journals and also in legal documents because the information has to be objective. So now we will have an activity where we are going to identify the passive voice sentence, starting with the first one. The cake was eaten by the children. And the other one is the children ate the cake. So the first sentence is a passive sentence. You can see in the sentence, the cake, which was the object in the active sentence, becomes the subject in the passive sentence. Now let's discuss the next sentence. Jerry kicked the ball. The ball was kicked by Jerry. The first one is the active sentence and the second one is the passive sentence. Although both of the sentences have the same meaning, but the expression is different. Now we are going to split this sentence to make it easy for you to three parts. Number one, the subject, or we can say the agent. Second is the action, and third is the object or the receiver. Now, in both of these sentences, the action is kicked, and the subject or agent in both the sentences is Jerry, and the object or the receiver is the one that receives the action, and in this case it is the ball. Now if we see the active sentence, it starts with the subject, Jerry. It is starting with Jerry, and the object is at the end of the sentence, which is the ball. So keep in mind that in an active sentence, the major focus is the subject, while if you look at the passive sentence, the major focus is the object or the receiver, which is the ball. And you can see in the passive sentence was, which is the verb be in the past tense, we put it in this sentence so that we can show that the ball is the receiver. So this is very important. So let's discuss one more example. He wrote the assignment for his sister. This is the active sentence, and the passive sentence will be the assignment was written by him for his sister. And now, after discussing about the passive voice, I will tell you some rules to turn the active sentence to a passive one. Now, number one, you have to identify the subject, the verb, and the object as we discussed right now in the examples. Number two, you have to move the object to become the new subject of the passive sentence, again, like we discussed previously. And the third rule is that you have to check the verb tense in the active sentence. What is the verb tense? So you can see in the sentence, the children wrote the book. So it is in the past simple. Okay, so let's move towards the next rule. So you have to now conjugate the verb be so that it's in the same tense as the main verb in the active sentence. So you can see we have the main or the new subject is the book. So we can use was. The book was. And now the fifth point that you have to remember is that you have to add past participle of the main verb. The main verb in this sentence, active sentence, is wrote. So the past participle of wrote is written. The book was written. And there's one more point, and that is that you can add the subject of the active sentence at the end of the passive sentence. And if you don't, that's okay. Like the book was written by the children. So the children is the subject of the active sentence.